Hello, my name is Doug Leisure, and I wanted to record this video today as we talk about the expenses portion of my donation expense software, recording the expenses and reporting the expenses. But I wanted to specifically look at the various funds that we're tracking and trying to help your management, your church management, or your governing board to understand what's there on the report, but also what's available to be spent in the different categories. All right, so let's take a look first of all and understand the sample church that we have here. Okay, so what we have is we have the general fund. So the majority of the money comes into the church, and the donations come into the general fund, and from there we do all of the expenditures related to maintaining the church and the supplies that we need, the various salaries. Everything related to the church comes out of there. In addition to that, we have other things that we're tracking, other funds or categories that are used basically for other purposes. So an example of that would be missions. All right, so we donate each week to the missions, and from there we send the money back out to the missionaries that we are supporting. One family in the Dominican Republic, the other in Zimbabwe. Every penny that comes in goes right back out. So when we end the month, an example here, when March is over, we know that we have $150 that we collected to send out. So then at the beginning of April, we send that 150 back out, half of it to each one. But the idea is that this particular item, this is money going outside of the church. It's not part of the general fund. And so this will go back out. Every penny that comes in will go right back out. And in a similar way, we do the same kind of a thing for our special donations. We collected $125 for coats for kids. Where I live, January is very, very cold, and so there's an organization that will buy coats for kids in need. So we collected $125 in January, and the entire $125 went back out at the end of January to that organization. So that's kind of the concept. Now there's one other one, charity, or some would use the word benevolence. So for our charity, we actually, long before we started using the software, we've been doing charitable work. So there is a balance that was already there before we started recording this information, before we started using the software to record it. So there is a balance available. And then as we track through it, we don't spend everything. So it's important that we know how much is in there that we have available when the need arises. And in a similar way, we need to know how much is available in our general fund to use for our church expenses. Okay, so that's kind of at a high level what this sample church is about. But here's the problem. As we give this report to our church leaders, to the governing board, just being honest with you here, a lot of times they're quite confused over all of these numbers and not understanding everything. A lot of times what they'll do is they'll look at this number here, the current balance, meaning how much is in the bank. Oh, that's how much we have to spend for our church expenses. No, that's not true. Of that $14,837, some of it is already committed, already allocated to other purposes. For example, part of that balance, part of that amount, is the money that we have been collecting for Vacation Bible School. We're getting ready to buy some supplies. We just haven't spent that money yet. We've collected it, we haven't spent it. So $270 of this $14,837 is not available for general expenses. And in a similar way, whatever we have in charity, whatever that current balance is, right, what we started with and what's still in there, that's not available to be spent for general. So that's That's why we want to modify this report and display that information for them. We don't want them to get the report and have to try to do the math in their head to figure out how much is available. We just want to let Excel do the calculations and then just display those amounts for them. That's the goal. Now, before we dive into those fun calculations, and it will be fun, I just wanted to go through a little bit further, a little more detail for you, some suggestions related to entering the information so that it does help us kind of understand it and track our way through the information, through the amounts. So let's start with the parameters that I gave you. So we'll come over here to the parameters. We're going to go down here to the expenses portion, and this is where we kind of want to start the conversation. So one of the items here, when we are recording our expenses, do we want to use categories and subcategories? And I'm going to say it's up to you, but I really am going to encourage you to use categories and subcategories. And what that'll do for us is make it a lot easier to identify the monies being spent on our charity, our specials, our missions. It'll simplify the reporting as well as the balances. So I'm going to suggest you say yes to using both. And then if you are using categories and subcategories, the next question is, as I'm recording my donations, do I want that information to automatically be copied over to my expenses so that I don't have to type them in? They're just simply already there. And I think that's a really good idea. If you do that, then you want to identify in the first column what word do we want to put there. And by default, you'll see it says deposits. And then for the category, what do you want to name that? And again, by default, it's the word donations. The subcategory, so the category will be donations, but the subcategory will be whatever you named your categories, your funds. So these three, in this sample company, these three plus the specials, those will be used for the categories. All right, if we just skip over here to the expenses tab where these are recorded, then you'll see how this plays out. So for example, in April 17th, we had our donations here. Okay, so we had 3 donations on that Sunday, and here you can see the word deposits was used in column A to identify that it was a deposit. The date, donations, that's the category. Again, you can modify those words over in the parameters if you need to. And then our category would be the donation categories, and then the amounts that were donated that week. So we can see how that is recorded here, and again that happened automatically. I didn't have to type that in. Now what I'm going to suggest then to help out in the reporting and the clarity of tracking the information is that when you do your expense, your payment, right, that we use this same word here to identify the category portion of the payment. So here's an example. In March, we had $150 come in for missions. So then in early April, we sent all of that back out. Now we happen to use PayPal as the methodology of doing the payment, but we sent that out to our missionary families in the Dominican Republic and Zimbabwe, half of it to each one. So the way we recorded it, though, is we used that same subcategory or donation category. We use that as our payment category, missions. And then in the subcategory, specifically who or what we paid to. Let's look at the same thing for charity. All right, we've collected charity over the entire year. As needed, we will make a payment out of that charity fund. And in this case, we used a credit card and we bought something for widow Martha. She had a need, so we bought her some groceries at the Food Lion grocery store using the credit card. So we record the category is charity, the subcategory is who or what we paid. All right, so I just wanted to point that out as a methodology then for entering. Now, everything else that's not missions, charity, or specials, everything else is going to end up being your general expense, and there are going to be quite a variety of those categories and subcategories. And then you'll just identify your particular desired breakdown for those categories and subcategories. And here's a pretty good example. Building maintenance, underneath of that we have all expenses related to maintaining the building. So electricity, gas, rent, telephone, water, those kinds of things. Right? We have our supplies that we're doing against the Christian education. So Sunday school supplies. We have salaries. So we do that under category employees, and then each of the different salaries that we pay out. It's that kind of an idea where you can break it down. But basically, everything that's not charity, missions, or specials, all of those expenses are going to be general expenses. Okay, I just want to kind of walk our way through that high-level discussion of that part of it. And now let's take a look at some of the mathematics and how we can actually modify the report to include these fund balances right on the report so that it's clear and obvious to everyone. Okay, first thing, let's come up here and make sure we are clear. This expense report is a sheet or a tab that is protected. So we're going to go to Review and Unprotect it. Now we are free to start making changes. And do I need to say, be careful, please don't be changing any of these cell formulas. And so as a way to prevent us from accidentally overwriting some of the things that are here already, we're going to start by inserting 4 or 5 or 6 rows. Let's go ahead and do let's insert 6 rows. That'll give us some room here to do our cell formulas in a way that we're not going to accidentally overwrite something else. All right, so ultimately this is where we want to display our fund balances. And we'll go ahead and just enter fund balances, and under there we want to display each of our balances in whatever order we want. Okay, so we will display it starting with general, followed by missions, charity, and then the specials. All right, so these will be the fund balances. And then we will put over here then the amounts. And this will be the report that we display. Hey, we have $15,000 in our general fund, that kind of an idea. That's the goal of what we're headed for. Let's do the cell formulas though to calculate these things, and then we'll be done with the report. Okay, now what I'm going to suggest is, rather than doing the mathematics right here, let's do the mathematics over on this side, and I'll explain in a moment as we start to build it why that is important. All right, step 1, let's understand that this particular report, the income and expense report, is going to display for each of the months for which we have data. Right now we have data January through May. As we move through the year, it's going to simply add additional columns, basically all the way over. Once we have 12 months in here, the grand total column is going to actually end up over in column N. As we add data, it'll automatically grow and extend everything to the right. So we don't really want to put any of our special cell formulas here in these columns that basically are in where the report's going to grow into them. We want to kind of stay away from that. So we'll just come over here off to the side, starting in column P. And what I'm going to suggest is that we want to go ahead and build our formulas over here in column P, Q, and R and S, whatever we need, and then whatever the mathematical results are, we just simply pull that number over here in column B for the display. But let's do our mathematics over here on this side. Okay, so these are going to be our list of funds, and we are going to want to enter or calculate the beginning balance, the change that took place, and then the ending or the remaining balance, how much we have to spend, and it'll be this amount that we reflect over here. Right, whatever's over there we'll pull over here, and so it'll just be a simple formula to display those amounts. Whatever we end up here in our calculated balance, we'll just pull it over and display it on the report. Okay, cell formulas. So first of all, I'm going to suggest that we have a place to enter a beginning balance. In the case of charity, all right, I told you the church has already been doing charitable work for a long time, and so when we started using this software, we actually had $170 available or in the balance of charitable fund available to be used. And so I'm going to give you I think you want a column to enter those beginning balances. Now in the case of missions and specials, we expect that's going to be 0, because everything that comes in goes right back out. So theoretically it should be a 0 balance, but just in case, we'll give you a place to enter a beginning balance. And we're going to circle back to general, because it's a little more complicated to back our way into what's really available for general. So we're going to start with the more simplistic ones. Let's start with missions. So beginning balance, we're going to say, hey, we sent everything out, so it's going to be a 0 balance, so nothing to put in there. But we need to calculate what took place, what has been the change to our missions balance. So let's start with how we would calculate the money coming in. So let's take a look at it. Over in our expenses tab where we record everything, if we look down through here, we see that the donations, the money coming in, is identified in column D. Okay, there's the word missions in column D, and the amount that we want to calculate is going to be everything that shows up in column F. So column F is what we are going to pull the amounts from, where column D has the word missions. Okay, let's go do that formula. Okay, it's a cell formula, and we're going to do the sum if S, a really fun formula. If you don't know it, please learn it. It's really fun and very powerful and useful. Okay, so the sum if S, and then it asks, please tell me your sum range, or where do I get the values from that I'm going to add up. And what we are adding are all of the values that are coming in column F, comma. The next thing it asks for is, what is the criteria range? So sum column F, where, let me just slide this down a little bit, where column D contains the word missions. Okay, so I'm putting in double quotes the word missions. Okay, So that cell formula calculated $780. Is that correct? Well, let's take a look at our report. If we look at missions, we had amounts come in January, February, March, April, and a total $780. Exactly the amount we calculated. So the cell formula is working correctly. The only change I'm going to make to the cell formula is rather than hard coding the word missions, we have that word missions right here in our cell in column P. So let's make it a little more generic, and this will just make it easier to reuse the formula. Let's, instead of typing it in, let's just simply point to the cell that contains the word missions. And there you'll see it calculated the same $780. All right, so that is the donation amount. What we want to do next is just simply subtract from the donations, subtract all of the payments. So, and if you remember, the payments show up in column E, and then the category is where the word missions will show up on the payments. So money coming in, we sum F and look for the word missions in D. For the payment, we sum up what's in E and match the word missions in the column C. So we just, very similar, and so we just adjust the column letters. That's all we have to do. Pretty simple, so we'll do that. So that's the money coming in, and we subtract from that all the money going out. And as I said, we just adjust these back to the column to its left. E and C rather than F and D, just that simple. And as a validation that this is the correct amount, let's look at missions. 780 came in, and in total we sent out 555. The difference is $225. And that is exactly what came in April, and we'll be sending it out very shortly in May to our missionaries. So mathematically, everything is working just fine. Now that that works, we're going to finish this off by saying that our true balance is our beginning balance plus the change. Okay, and since there was no beginning balance, it's the same $225. Let's do the same mathematics here on our charity and confirm that this works. Copy those two formulas down to here, and we calculated $145 for our remaining balance. Let's validate that things are working correctly. Okay, so in charity we're showing that our change is actually a negative 25. So we spent $25 more than we had come in. Well, let's take a look at it. Charity. So for the year so far we had $320 come in. Look at our total charity, sum that was done for the Martha and the Smith family, but that total for the year is $345. If we look down here, yes, so we did spend, so that's a negative 25. We actually spent more this year than we had come in, but it wasn't a problem because we had $170 in the fund already as our starting balance, and now we still have $145 remaining to be used if the need arises, and we expect that we'll continue to get additional donations to our charitable fund as we move through the month of May and August, for the rest of the year. So we should be in pretty good shape there. Last thing we're going to talk about are the specials. So let's talk about that just briefly. And what we're going to do is we're going to just borrow this one formula real quick. to help us discuss that. Specials are a little bit different because there's more than one special throughout the year. So the word specials by itself don't really show up. It's specials and something else to identify what's special. So let's take a look at that. And we're just going to replace the lookup for a second. If I use the word specials, I get 0 because nothing has that word exactly, right? If I was looking specifically for specials dash VBS, well, now I can find it. So we could list here our specials, VBS, our specials, Code for Kids. So we could have a big list here of all of those details, and you're welcome to do that if you want to. However, there's a little trick we can use in Excel and you're doing this kind of a text lookup, a little trick that Excel gives us that I wanted to talk about. So the first one is the idea of using the question mark as a substitute for characters in your text. So if you look at specials and then you have a dash VBS, that's 4 additional characters after the word specials. And if we put 4 question marks there, that tells Excel to go search for anything that starts with the word specials, and then I don't care. There's going to be 4 more characters, but I don't care what they are. Okay? So in doing that, it has the ability to look up specials dash VBS, or specials dash ABC would also be found using those question marks as the replacement character. Now there's one other trick, and this is where it's going to be extremely beneficial for us and how we want to use it. The other option you have is to put in an asterisk. And what that says is the text will begin with the word specials, and then I don't care what letters, what characters, or how many there are at the end of the word specials. So it's a wild card kind of a lookup. And then if we do that, it will calculate $395. And this is on the income side. That's all we're looking at right now. So let's just validate that that is working correctly. So it's our $125 in the coats, the $270 in the VBS, totaling $395. So we just validated that it's working correctly. And so what we'll do over here is we're just going to simply, in our column, we're going to use specials and an asterisk, and that'll be our lookup. And so since we do that, now we can borrow these formulas exactly as we created them and put them down here. And so it's going to calculate that we have a remaining balance of $270 for the specials, and that is correct. All right, last and final thing, what do we do about the general? On the income side of it, it's pretty easy because it is using the word general as our fund identifier. So the income's easy. It's the outgoing, the payments, the expenses, because those are going to be a huge variety of different categories and subcategories. And in fact, it's going to be something that changes every time we have new and additional expenses. So it's going to be a little bit challenging, but let's walk our way through it, okay? So again, I'm going to suggest that we have the possibility of putting in that beginning balance, that we calculate the change, and therefore we can then calculate our ending balance. That's how I'm going to suggest we do it. The question right now is going to be, what do we do to calculate the change? Because of the complexity I just mentioned, how the expense part of it is going to be a variety, in fact a changing variety of different categories and subcategories. So the way we're going to tackle that is to go back to our original understanding. The donation part of it is going to be both parts of it, both the donation, the money coming in, and the money going out, is going to be everything that is not charity, not missions, and not specials. Everything else is general. Okay, so let's do what I just stated verbally. Let's do that mathematically. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to start with a formula to sum up everything, every deposit, and from there we're going to subtract off every payment, okay, and what that represents is everything. But what I said is it's everything except missions, charity, and specials. So this is everything, and now we just simply remove missions, charity, and specials. All right, so if we know that we have $4,882.75 as our beginning balance for the general fund, then we can now calculate that our change was fortunately a positive 9,000, and our remaining balance is $14,197.15, and that is our general fund. And notice, as I said before, the amount available for the general expenses is different than what's in the bank, and that's our whole purpose for adding our fund balances to the report. All right, let's just talk about one other small thing. If you are being very diligent to identify the true beginning balance when you start the new year, if you're diligent about that this really does represent the opening or the beginning balance at the beginning of the year, then we can actually simplify our calculations over here by using the current balance. Again, I'm just saying, not everyone is paying as much attention to this opening balance. So if you're being very diligent, then we can just use the calculated current balance. If not, then you'll want to do what I did over here on the side, and that is go ahead and type in here your true beginning balance for the general fund here, and then let it calculate the ending or current balance. But if you're being very diligent on your opening balances, then we can actually simplify our calculation over here and go ahead and calculate it a little more directly. So let's talk about our beginning balance then. Rather than typing it in manually, we can actually calculate our beginning balance, because our beginning balance is going to be, for the general fund, it's going to be whatever we have in our current balance minus any of these missions, charity, or special beginning balances. Okay, so that is our beginning balance. And then from there we can calculate the change. Sorry, actually we don't need to do that. Let's change this. We don't even need any of this, quite honestly. What we can do instead is we can calculate this directly. Again, if as long as we trust these balances, we can actually say that our general fund is this amount minus the balances in missions, charity, and specials. So that balance minus the balances for missions, charity, and specials. And calculate our way there directly. And that's the same number, the 14,197. So we don't even need to do the beginning change and balance over here because it's such a simple direct formula. Again, that's if you trust your opening balances here, so that this is a correct current balance. All right, and then just to finalize everything, if we look at our parameters, let's go ahead and say yes, please open up the dialog box when I print, and that'll just give me a chance to preview it. I just wanted to show you then, if we go ahead and look at printing the expense report. Do you want to see the dialog box? Yes, I do. So now we can preview the report, and what you'll see is that as part of the income and expense report, we now display our fund balances. Okay, that's exactly what I wanted to cover in today's video. Thank you.